Good morning, Fred Hall. How
Morning,
are
Kevin.
you?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I know we were going to see each other a few times, and here we are. This is very exciting to us because why? You're such a big part of Port Jefferson. You know, how do we go through the day without hearing doot, 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 which I'm going to ask you about in a second. Well, describe to us what was the improvements that happened this summer.
Well, we had last rebuilt the pier in the mid-1980s, and the life expectancy of materials in a pier like that are approximately 30 years, so we were right on target for a rebuild, and we spent $10 million last year rebuilding all the bulkheads, and that will put the next rebuild well beyond my tenure.
That's right. 40 years or 50 years, right?
Should be 40 to 50 years for this steel, yes.
You know, when you had given me some information prior to coming on, you put the year 1883, and I said to myself, did he make a mistake, or has this ferry been running since 1883?
It has been running since 1883 and was founded principally by two gentlemen. One you may have heard of, Phineas T. Barnum, P.T. Barnum,
yep.
From Bridgeport, Connecticut, who did a number of company foundings, but a key one was the Bridgeport Port Jefferson Steamboat Company, and he hooked up with a gentleman who was a deep sea captain, a gentleman named Charles Tooker from Port Jefferson, and they really put the ferry together in 1883, so yes.
Was the reason at first to move people from Connecticut to Port Jefferson, was it always that?
It really was to connect the manufactured goods of Bridgeport, Connecticut with the agricultural goods of Long Island. But people also went from Port Jeff to Bridgeport for dentistry and for cultural activities. Okay. So, and at one point, I don't know whether a lot of people know this, but we had a second stop in Port Jefferson between 1883 and 1888, plus or minus, and it was called California Grove, and it was a dance hall, restaurant, entertainment venue built out off of Poquat. So there were two actual Port Jefferson stops.
I can assure you nobody knows about that.
Yeah.
Are you saying they came over from Connecticut, stopped
there, and then came into the regular dock?
And would it run into all hours of the night since it was a dance hall?
No, it was really for day trippers to come over and enjoy themselves. So it was competition because there were plenty of reasons in those days to go to Bridgeport, plenty of reasons, but not as many to come to Port Jeff. So that was the way to entice people to Port Jeff.
Gotcha. So another astounding number that you gave, and I want to qualify it, is the number of passengers these days and cars that your company handles.
Last year we carried approximately 450,000 cars, and just by way of giving you a benchmark, when I started with the company full-time in 1982, we carried 35,000 cars. So there's been a little bit of growth. And we're carrying about 1 million passengers a year, and that includes people in cars, people who walk on, people who take advantage of our tours, people who just take a trip, just a round trip.
So I love this because it goes to my great interest in mobility, and so we see people moving, wanting to move, possibly not wanting to, definitely not wanting to drive around the island through that godforsaken Bronx River Parkway and Cross Bronx Parkway. What's the reason for the increase? I mean, it's definitely population growth.
Well, first of all, the two drivers of the ferry business are frequency and capacity. So in 1982, we only had one boat that held 35 cars. Okay, we now have 3 boats that hold, 2 of them hold 120 cars each, and the other one holds about 85.
Okay.
So frequency and capacity,
gotcha.
The two drivers.
So if it's the old adage, if you build it, they will come, is what's happened, really. Are you telling me you could use a 4th boat?
Well, I don't know that we could make a reasonable schedule with a 4th boat.
Okay.
We're kind of locked into 3 at this point. However, in the future, that may be possible.
A couple of years ago, more, maybe a couple of decades ago, was there a high-speed ferry that was entering the picture here?
There was a passenger-only boat that ran for a couple of years in the early 1960s. It was an old air-sea rescue boat that was converted to passenger ferry use, and there just wasn't enough demand for the service, so it ultimately got sold.
So what I see from my personal use on the ferry is it's such a pleasure to be able to drive onto the boat, number one, so that's easy, and then it's part of your vacation, it's part of your trip, even if it's business over there. You have the breakfast, you have the restaurant, so to speak, you have a bar. You make it really nice. And if you go up to the top deck and look over that beautiful water, why wouldn't you do it? really so pleasurable, I think.
Well, we like to refer to the traffic problem as the Throgs Neck bottleneck, and that definitely helps us out. It's about 100 driving miles between Bridgeport and Port Jeff.
Okay.
And so it depends on where you're coming from on the island, whether it makes sense or not. Our market area, primary market area, is really the Riverhead town line west to, at the outside, the Huntington town line, but a little about halfway through Smithtown.
Is it a completely separate company out in Orient?
It is. We owned that company until 1974. It was sold in 74. And actually, a lot of people split their use on particularly the Boston market. They will go out on Orient Point, but they'll come back out of Bridgeport because they know once they hit Bridgeport, they're home.
Right.
They like the ride through the countryside, but they're tired coming home. They're going to take us. So we split a little bit of business.
Okay, so listen.
There goes the horn, right?
So that's the horn. Are we going to? 3. What
Right.
does that mean, Fred?
Okay, 3 means we're backing up.
Okay.
So the initial one is we're preparing to get underway, and then the 3 is we're backing up to warn all vessels that might be behind us.
You know, it's important that I let people know what this means because this is a true story. My brother-in-law visited Port Jefferson from Florida, took his little daughter on the boat, and had no idea what those things meant. And we looked around. We were in a restaurant here in Port Jefferson, and he was in Connecticut with his daughter. He had no idea, so he only went on there to show her. And that's where he ended up. So
Took a little ride, did he?
It's good to know. How about when the boat comes in? Does it do any beeps then?
No, not
Okay.
not unless somebody's in the way and they need to blow some danger signals. But
Right. What are the names of the 3 vessels?
the oldest is the Park City, which is Bridgeport, Connecticut's nickname. And then we have the PT Barnum, which is a natural. And the Grand Republic is actually the second ferry that we have had here by that name. And it was named after a boat that ran for our parent company many years ago on the Hudson River. Everyone just liked the name Grand Republic, so.
Yeah, it sounds cool. It sounds big.
Yep.
Is the fact that we're a deep water harbor, absolutely necessary for you to operate?
We only draw about 12 feet, so
Okay.
we don't need really deep water, and we're doing okay right now.
Good. So in terms of economics, what does it cost for a typical family to get across?
Well, I'm going to refer to,
Yeah.
because there are brand new rates. We actually have increased some rates and we've lowered some rates. For example, if you drive a smart car now, you're not paying the full rate, you're paying the same as a motorcycle with a sidecar.
Wow.
So that's a reduction. And we also have we've added peak and off-peak rates. So if you travel Monday through Thursday, with a car and driver Monday through Thursday is 59 in the off-peak, unless it's a holiday, of course, and then in the peak it's 62. And we're hoping that because we're getting so busy on the weekends, that lower rate Monday through Thursday will have people rethinking about when they're going to travel and maybe save a few bucks.
Yeah.
So, and we also added, we used to have what was called a family special, which was car and unlimited passengers, and it was only available Monday through Thursday. So now it's available. Add $24 to the base rate in the off-peak and $43 in the peak.
Yep.
So we now have that.
I mean, there's something in every season too. I can see this makes so much sense. You're placing things in here that make sense to travel to over there in Connecticut, and really in every season. I also remember the highlight years. I'm sure you did too.
I loved highlight. We had so much fun in the highlight years. We used to take sometimes 200 or 300 people on a Saturday morning for the Saturday matinee highlight, and I used to go myself.
I'm sure.
I found it first of all interesting, a game that not many Americans really are aware of, and I thought it was excellent.
Well, fantastic. Well, we thank you for coming on for the first time. I'd love to have you back again, especially if there's new news about your company, the Bridgeport and Port Jefferson Steamboat Company. Thank you so much, Fred Holler, for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.